Hi guys and gals, today we're gonna talk about squats. I believe everybody must do squats. There are a lot of variations that are based on your flexibility and your goals. Today we're just gonna talk about the main forms and the main position that you should put yourself in, but we're gonna do other videos about the other forms as well. As mentioned, I believe everybody should do squats, but this is a compound movement, and with every compound movement you have to consider that not everybody should do squats or other compound movements for strength. The reason is, first of all, compound movements involve a lot of joints and a lot of muscles. If you got imbalances, if you got tightness, if you got any problem just in one joint, that can destroy everything. And with strength exercises you usually go heavy, so because of that you're just putting a lot of pressure on your joints, muscles, and just if they're not flexible you're just stretching them too much, and that can affect how you perform the exercise. It can cause imbalances and even injuries. So because of that you have to consider first how your body type is, what your flexibility is, what are your capabilities, and second, what your goal is. And the first step is really tricky because some of the things like, for example, flexibility of the calf, whether you can stretch it enough or not, or the strength of the muscle, that can be changed, but there are some other things that cannot be changed. For example, one of them, if you've got disc issues, or if you're, for example, you've got a long femur, the femur is this bone. So if your thigh bone is really long, you're not gonna be able to go heavy that much. So you should still do squats, but you shouldn't just focus on squats as a main compound movement for building strength. I'm gonna go through that, but like always, I'm gonna go through everything from all the way down to your toes and go all the way up to your neck and head positioning. Without further ado, let's talk first about the feet positioning. Although there are a lot of variations on performing the squats, but if you're just getting started or you want to just build your strength and overall fitness, something a little bit wider than shoulder width is going to be alright for you. For the majority of people, this is a good positioning. But let me just go through a little bit of details. The foot positioning is the first and the most important thing. And the reason is, the way you position your feet is going to affect everything. So all the other things are going to be positioned based on the way you position your feet. When I go up, you're going to understand. Make sure whatever foot position, whether you go wide, you go narrow, whatever it is, make sure all the feet is flat on the ground. So make sure you avoid things like this, so heels off the ground, or even bringing the toes up. Make sure all the feet, so the entire surface of the feet is on the ground. And also, this is something that a lot of people make a lot of mistakes. Make sure you push with both legs equally and you distribute the force equally as well. Pushing with both legs is easy to understand, but believe me, I've seen a lot of people who, for example, if they write with right hand, or they just are right-handed, they use a lot more from the right as well. So you see them doing like this, or just pushing a lot with this one, and this is obvious, but understanding it is easy, but a lot of people still make the mistake. So make sure the force is the same. So if one side is weaker and cannot perform that heavy, go a little bit lighter. Make sure your focus is first balance, then strength. And the second thing I mentioned, I see a lot of people, because they distribute the weight bad from the side or in, they just have a lot of imbalances and their knees come in and go up. There are other reasons for that as well. I'm going to go through it. But first, make sure you distribute the force equally. To make it easier, think of 3 dots. So one is here, one is here, and one is here. So something like this. Make sure you're just pushing these 3 dots. When you focus on that, you're gonna be able to push entirely. And another thing which comes to the feet as well. If you've got flat feet, now that's a long discussion, but just to put it simply, it's not a good idea to go heavy and train with as heavy as you can. At least make sure you're doing high reps, at least 8 reps. Do not come lower. That can cause a lot of problem in the knees, because when the weight gets heavy, if you just do not know how to stabilize yourself, even if you do, if it's really bad, it's just unfortunately you cannot do anything about it. You should still squat, but there are other things that you'll have to implement to the exercise to make it safe for your body type and also get the best out of it. I'm gonna make other videos about things like flat feet and these issues as well, but still we're gonna cover them a little bit. So if you've got flat feet, it's better to not go heavy and go a little bit, if you can, wider. So you're gonna use a little bit more glutes. In that case, the knees are not gonna cave in easy, because when you do this, it's really hard to use the glutes. But when you go wide, you can use the glutes so the knees do not come in and your feet doesn't come off the ground. So the feet positioning, we're still on the feet positioning. Believe me, it's really important. If you come like this and you do the squat, although you might feel that it's a little bit easier for you to just push, but the thing is, the reason that it's easier is because mostly the people have stronger adductors than abductor muscles, and they do not perform it correctly as well. You see people doing this. They push the knees to each other and they just come up. You might feel that you have a stability if you do this, but you're causing a lot of injuries and you're not doing the exercise correctly. But believe me, if you try to just keep your leg like this and do the squat, it's gonna be harder. And the reason is you are deactivating the glutes, so you really should focus on using them. So if you stretch a muscle a lot, it's really hard for you to use it. So when you're in this position, you're stretching the glutes a lot, so you really need to be focused on using them. If you do not use them, the legs are gonna come in. But if you use them, they're gonna be in the neutral position. The knees should always come to the feet. We're gonna go to the knees in a few seconds, but believe me, we're still in the feet, because the feet is gonna affect everything, as mentioned. Now, when your feet is really close or shoulder width and a little bit inside, so if this is shoulder width, this is a little bit shoulder width and inside, especially if you're tall and you've got a long femur as mentioned, it's gonna be actually bad. And the reason is, this is the longest that this leg can be. The wider you go, the less this is gonna be compared to your torso. So if you're tall, you can compensate that problem with going a little bit wider. But the thing is, when you go wider, a lot of people have tight adductors. So a lot of people are not gonna be able to just stretch them good, and it might be a little bit painful. So we're gonna talk about the muscles in here, but first of all, just one quick other thing about the feet positioning, which is actually related to the knee. Make sure the toes are never in or even straight. Make sure the toes are always a little bit out and not exaggerated as well. So if this is 0, this is 90 degrees, it should be somewhere between, for example, 10 degrees to 50 degrees, or at most 60 degrees. So this could be 60 degrees. And the more you bring it out, the more you're gonna make your feet positioning wider. And so you should choose that based on the flexibility of the adductors and other things that we're gonna talk about. You're gonna understand that. So the more narrow you are, bring it a little bit inside. The more wider you go, the toes are gonna come outside. Now, why did I say it's related to the knees? To perform the exercise good in a safe way and also be able to perform it with maximum strength, and overall it's just what our body naturally prefers. The toes should be with the same line as the knees. So if the toes are like this, the knees should be here as well. I cannot do a squat like this or like this. It's just naturally weird. But if you just force your leg to be in a position and just try to do it for whatever reason, you heard somewhere, or I don't know, somebody told you to work, if you want to work on a specific muscle, you should do that. That's just bad. You're just hurting yourself. So make sure always the knee and the toes are in one lane. Also, another thing that comes into the feet positioning is the capability of your calf muscle to be stretched. The more narrow you go, the more you're gonna be stretching the calf. And the more wide you go, it's gonna be less stretch. So make sure if you got tight calves, you stretch them anyway, because still you want them to be stretched. But if they're really tight and you just cannot do the exercise with a narrow feet, it's okay to go a little bit wider, so they're not gonna get that much stretch. But make sure the adductors are stretched. Also, there's another thing that comes to the back. We're gonna talk about it in a few seconds. So far we had the feet. We are gonna talk about feet later on as well, but let's come a little bit higher. The knee positioning, as mentioned, knees should be aligned with the toes. But another thing that I really see people doing, and another mistake, is they might have the knees aligned with the toes, but what they do is they push the hip too much back and just bend the knee a little bit. So they come down like this. They push the hip too much back and then the leg. You see, to be able to do a squat, you have to make sure that the degree of the knee and the hip go out with the same speed and distance. So if I have a bar on my back, as you can see, if the bar is here, if I do this, there is a lot of tension on my back. Also, if I bend the knee too much forward, there is a lot of tension on my knees. You should do something in between. So you should bend the knee and the hip with each other. So the bar goes down in a straight line, as straight as possible. So as you can see, this is a straight line. And the reason is for keeping the bar straight. When you keep the weight, the majority of the weight in the center, you're gonna be able to have a lot more balance, and you're gonna be able to create the most power. So if I go forward, it's just gonna destroy the balance. If I go back, it's gonna destroy the balance. So the first thing is the knee. Make sure it's towards the toes and you bend it with the hip. That's also really dependent on the height of the femur as well. And it's a little bit more complicated, but we will talk about it because there are a lot of people who are tall or just have like femurs, or they just have a really short torso. So because of that, it's better to talk about it. First of all, if you've got long femur, it's better to bring the bar lower. So instead of keeping it all the way up, bring it on your scapula, and this way, because it's a little bit lower, you're not gonna be bending too much and putting a lot of pressure. The degree is gonna be the same, but because the weight is a little bit lower, it's gonna be easier. It's like, for example, doing a shoulder raise like this or like this. You shorten the distance, so this is gonna be easier compared to this. And it's the same thing. If the bar is on your scapula, because this is closer to here, it's gonna be easier, and that's a good thing. We're gonna make it easier for the back. We're still targeting the legs. So, and also, you do not need to bring it all the way up. We're gonna talk about it. So, the knee positioning is done as well. The hip positioning, this is really important. One of the problems that we have, and people get a lot of disc issues, is not just because they lift heavy, it's because they go into a position which is called posterior pelvic tilt. You see, this is a normal positioning of my pelvis. If you see my finger, if I just put it here, this is normal. If I do this, this is called anterior pelvic tilt. And again, this is normal, this is anterior. If this is normal and I do this, this is posterior pelvic tilt. When you are doing a squat, you should keep your back neutral. So again, this is my neutral, and everybody is different. When you just try to exaggerate the movement, everybody is gonna go through posterior pelvic tilt at last. So you've got to understand where your form is getting compromised and stop there. This is my neutral body. If I go down, 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 it's still neutral. I still have this. If I go down, 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 from a point, for me, it's here. When I go a little bit lower, it's gonna come forward, and I can see that I do not have any kind of arch in my back anymore. And that is because the hamstring and also, especially the adductor muscles, are grabbing the pelvis and grabbing it forward, and that can cause disc issues. The reason is this is coming forward, so like this, and my back is angled forward as well. So all the all the liquids in your vertebrae is getting pushed to the back, to the nerves. If you've got some disc problems, you're gonna feel a lot of pain. Also, if you do not have any problems, you can cause disc issues. So all the fluid is just getting jammed to the back. Also, you do not need to keep an anterior tilt or exaggerated anterior tilt as well. This is also not good because the weight is here and your spine is like this, the weight is pushing it down. It's not good. Just try to keep it neutral. If you want, you can just a little bit, keep it a little bit back to understand where you should stop. But make sure whenever you feel that your glutes are coming forward, that's the level. And again, that comes to the feet position and where you put your legs. When you go wide, the adductors are gonna get stretched, and when they get stretched, they're gonna bring it forward. So if you've got tight adductors, you've gotta stretch them. And if you go narrow, you're gonna be able to go a little bit lower, but still you might just have tight hamstring, and the hamstrings kind of attached to the sitting bone as well, so they're gonna grab it and bring it down, so it's gonna be bad for the back. Another thing that comes to the degree of both hip and the knee is I see a lot of people, they go down and they come up and they just push too much forward, or they just have a fully straight knee. It's better to have a little bit of bend or a degree of bend in both of these. So when you go down and come up, do not come all the way up. It's better to just keep it like this, not fully up. Or I see people pushing it forward as well. You're causing a lot of damage. You do not need to do that. The weight is coming on your back. The resistance is not in that position that you just push. So you're not doing anything for your glutes. They're not under pressure. It's just your spine that's under a lot of pressure. So we talked about here. Let's come a little bit higher. The abs. Of course, the majority of people know about the breathing, the Valsalva maneuver, which a lot of people do but do not know the name, which is just keeping the breath in, trying to breathe out, but just holding it. So you're gonna have a lot more stability, you're gonna activate the transverse abdominis. Just make sure the ab is used. Avoid breathing in and out between the exercise, so it's better to breathe in and hold. It's gonna help you have a better spine and avoid any injuries, which is related to this area, and prevent flexion of the spine, which can even cause disc issues in your thoracic spine, also in the lumbar spine as well. So make sure this is activated. It's also really important to stretch the chest as well. You might say why? You see, when you do a squat and grab the bar on your back, as you can see, I need to have a stretched chest so I can hold the bar. If I've got tight chest, I'm gonna be grabbing the bar too much high or just bringing the elbow too much forward, which is gonna be bad for my shoulder, also stability. Also my wrist is gonna be too much back. But if my chest is flexible, I can bring it all the way back and control the weight. Also, when it's flexible, I can contract my traps in a better way and I can just rest the bar on top of my traps. So make sure you stretch the chest and you really control the weight with a chest that's not feeling any pain. I see a lot of people when they do a squat, they feel a lot of pain in here, which is not good. You're putting the tendon under a lot of pressure. So make sure you stretch here. The elbow positioning, it comes naturally. Just when you do it, I rarely see people putting the elbow forward or back. That's mostly related to how they position themselves. And when you position yourself good, you're gonna position the elbow good, no worries with that. But the wrist, make sure the wrist is not like this. So if you're doing a squat, make sure, although the majority of the weight is on your back, but still do not keep your wrist like this. Try to just come all the way and just keep the wrist straight as much as you can. So not this, this. We talked about the wrist as well. Let's talk about the neck. I see a lot of people, and this happens a lot. When people want to squat, they look in the mirror and they go down and they're like this. Like this. You see, you should not, when you do the squat and you look forward, it's like doing a shoulder press and being like this. Or doing some other exercise and being like this. It's not good to keep the neck in a bad position and unnatural position, even if there is no weight on your head or neck or anything. It's just not good. You're just putting a lot of pressure on it. I also have seen people who just put their necks too much back, they just get tired or whatever, that can cause disc issues. So make sure neck, head, chest with each other. I always say the wrist should be straight, also neck, head, chest should be straight and move with each other. So this is the wrist, this is the neck. Make sure you do not bend the neck in any direction. I haven't seen anybody going to the side, but front and back, I see it all the time. Also, another thing that I see tall people have problem with, or people, as mentioned, that have long femur or short torso, have the problem with is the strain on the back, because they just come too much forward and it's just a lot of tension. One way to get away with it is just using something like this. So when you put something like this under your heels, it's gonna make it easier for you. Let me show you from the side as well. First, you see, if there is a bar on my back, if I go down like this, my back is a lot further and I feel the strain on my calf. But if I go like this is gonna be easier for my back as well. It's not gonna be bent too much forward and it's gonna be easier. But the thing is, I do not have a lot of stability with this. So only use this when you're not going for heavy weight. So if you're training for 8 reps or more, it's good, but if you're doing 5 reps of heavy weight, it's just not good to use this because the stability is not going to be good. Also, there is a lot of tension on your toes if you just lift a lot of weight. So make sure you try this, see how it feels, and make sure you do a lot of stretches in your adductors and also in your glutes. If you've got tightness in the glutes, also you're not going to be able to go down easily. So make sure you stretch the muscles that need to be stretched. If, for example, you've got really adductors that are really good and don't need any stretching and they're just stretched already, you need to strengthen them. So do not stretch a muscle that's already stretched. Just stretch a muscle that's imbalanced. And the imbalance is based on the opposing muscle. So my glutes and my adductors should have equal strength and ability to have a stretch or a flexibility. So make sure you match them with each other. The quads should be like your hamstring, and your calf should have the same flexibility and strength as your tibialis anterior. I'm not saying the same strength, so if you lift, for example, this much with this, it should be the same with the opposing as well. No, I just mean that based on the strength for the muscle that you're training. Anabolic. Make sure if you like the video, you leave your comments and thumbs up below and tell me if you had any questions.